Hello everyone and welcome back to the Chicken Legged Hut. I'm the Hermit, and before I get into this video, I'm going to let you all know that this project, much like our last project, was a complete fail, and I didn't really plan on using this footage until I had some sort of success with it. But just like the fool in his Dongo, I'm completely over it. So I don't have any cool finished product to show off at the end of this. All I have is a bunch of nat ones and hard lessons learned that I'm going to share with you, so hopefully you won't make the same mistakes, and at the very least, I hope you can get a good laugh out of the absolute hell that this project was for me. So with that being said, please enjoy the video. So let me give you a little backstory for this project. The Fool and I are both big into D&D, so when Baldur's Gate 3 came out, we both obsessively played the hell out of it. And if you ever played the game, then you know there's an artifact that's shaped like a D20 that's super important or something. I don't know, I haven't beaten the game yet. Anyways, we wanted to make something similar to that, not necessarily an exact replica, but something close to it. So I broke out the 3D printer and attempted to print a master that we can make a mold of. And that's where mistake number one comes in. Up until this point, I had never tried to print a Jumbo D20. I had only attempted to print normal sized die masters, and even those were a problem for me. But I was originally using Blender, which is a free 3D modeling software that's really cool, but kind of hard to master. Or at least it was for me. Then I switched over to a different free program that's just for making die masters. I'm pretty sure it's just called Dice Maker, and it's so much easier. But the problem wasn't with the program, the problem was the supports I added to the model. They just couldn't maintain the weight of this thing. Now, this is how I was doing my supports on the smaller die, and that only worked because the smaller die don't weigh as much as a Jumbo D20 does. But I didn't think about that before printing it, so I ended up with this droopy master, which I ended up being kind of okay with. I mean, I kind of liked the fact it wasn't perfect and was sort of concave at the top and bottom. It made it feel more like an artifact and a little less like a normal D20. So I was willing to look past that part of it and move on to casting the mold. But the next mistake that got made basically ruined this project. Now, I originally started this project around the same time we were working on our Wizard Tower candle video, which is one of our earliest videos, and if you haven't seen it, you should check it out. It was a really fun project. But since both of these projects required a silicone mold, it just made sense to work on them at the same time. This was also my first attempt at making a press cap mold, and it seemed like everything was going smoothly. I had a small leak in the mold housing at one point, which wasn't a big deal, since it wasn't losing an excessive amount of silicone. However, there was a crucial step I missed before attempting to make this mold, and that was coating the master in some kind of inhibitor, like Inhibit X or even just an enamel clear coat. And the reason you do this is because 3D printer resin and silicone don't work well together. I don't know why exactly, probably some chemistry bullshit, but basically any of the silicone that touched the surface of the master didn't properly cure. So when I removed the master from the mold, I was left with a goo covered mess, a ruined mold, and a rage that was untethered and knew no bounds. Now, I really wish I could say I didn't know I needed to do that, but sadly I can't, because I knew I needed to, but unfortunately I forgot, and because of that I wasted the last of our silicone and ended up with a flawed mold that is still usable, but honestly this was a real slap to my motivation. I had to just walk away from this project and move on to something else for a little bit. I mean, if I used the actual audio from this exact moment, it would sound like this. I mean, and and then we'd never be able to monetize this video. But despite the fact this made me rage like the Incredible Hulk, I wasn't fully ready to give up on this project, and I was determined to find a use for this mold, eventually. But first I had to clean up the master and the mold as I tried to figure out what the hell I was going to do with this thing. So after my anger subsided and I could look at this mold without going blind from rage, I decided to try using it as a candle mold, which I didn't bother recording because it was more of a test just to see what the final results would look like. But after popping the candle out of the mold, it was pretty clear that it wasn't going to work well. So I threw it back on the junk shelf and just quit looking at it. But every time I came to the hut, there it was, just sitting there, staring at me, menacingly. I couldn't take it. There was just no way I was going to let this project get the best of me. I had to find a use for this thing. Now let's fast forward a couple of months to our epoxy resin project of the creepy hand reaching out of a portal, which if you haven't seen it, you should go check it out as well. It's definitely one of my favorite projects so far. But during that project, I ended up making a little more resin than I needed. So I decided to just use the mold as an excess resin collector. I kind of figured by the end of that project, I could completely fill the mold and at least have a jumbo D20 without the details. And then I could just go back and hit it with a Dremel or something to add some runes and details or whatever. But of course, I wasn't done making mistakes yet. Now, when we first decided to start the channel, we picked up a handful of equipment and materials to use for projects and videos. And one of those things was a pressure pot for the epoxy resin projects. Or at least that's what I thought we picked up. But it wasn't. It was a vacuum chamber, which does something completely different than a pressure pot. And if you know anything about epoxy resin, I'm sure you're laughing right now because you already know what happened. But for those of you that don't know anything about epoxy resin, I'll explain. A pressure pot forces liquids into smaller spaces and compresses air bubbles, while a vacuum chamber removes air from a sealed container and pulls the air bubbles out of a material. You leave resin in a pressure pot to cure, and you use a vacuum chamber to quickly remove air bubbles from resin. What I did was use a vacuum chamber to try and cure resin, which doesn't work. So what I ended up with was basically plastic styrofoam and more rage. Honestly, at this point, I was ready to just put all this footage and that mold in a rocket and launch it into the great void of space so I'd never have to see it again. But NASA refuses to respond to any of my letters. But since the rocket plan wasn't an option, I had no choice but to keep it around and give it another try. But this time I didn't use the vacuum chamber at all. I just added the leftover resin to the mold and let it cure naturally over time. And since the hand coming out of a portal project required so many layers of resin, there were plenty of opportunities to fill the mold. And letting it naturally cure did give me better results than the vacuum chamber, but honestly my heart just wasn't in this project. I was definitely more focused on the hand coming out of the portal project. Not to mention at this point I didn't have high expectations for this mold. I mainly just wanted to pull something out of it that wasn't riddled with air bubbles, and to try and get an idea for what it's going to look like and if I could actually use it to make anything cool in the future. But the end result was a crater-filled jumbo D20 with a half-assed dye job that I eventually started to sand to try and remove some of the craters, but ultimately decided it was a waste of my time and moved on to something else. But I took this whole experience as a learning lesson, and now the next time I attempt to use this mold, I'll have a pretty good idea of what to do. And for any future projects that require making a silicone mold with 3D printed anything, you better believe I won't forget to coat them in something. But after editing all this footage and having to relive this all over again, I doubt I'll be picking this project back up anytime soon. So here's what I learned. 1. Jumbo D20s require way more support than a normal D20. 2. 3D printer resin and silicone don't react well together. You have to coat the resin in something to protect it. 3. Pressure pots and vacuum chambers are not the same thing. They look similar, but they have different purposes. Don't mix them up. That's it. That's all I got. I wish I had a cool finished product to show off, but sadly, I don't. So at the very least, I hope this video can help some of you prevent similar problems with your own projects, or that you at least got some kind of enjoyment out of my suffering, you sick little freak. Just kidding. We love you all. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and leave a comment telling me your favorite meme. Because I definitely need some dank memes and dank nugs after living through this shit again. Oh, and if you're new here or haven't done it yet, make sure you subscribe or be Kirsten along. You'll be affected by gravity.
Are you sure you know where you're going?
For the last time, yes. Now will you stop asking? I'm trying to think.
I'm just saying. We've been walking around these woods for weeks now. It kind of feels like we're...
Will you just shut up? I can't focus with you constantly complaining and yapping.
My feet hurt.
Oh, for the love
How
of God.
is that even possible? I've been giving you a piggyback ride this entire time.
And you're doing a fantastic job, sweetie. Keep up
This
the
is
good work.
actual hell.
Okay, Miss Daisy. Wait. Why are we even walking? Don't you two have brooms that we could just fly on?
How
Here we
progressive
go.
of you.
Can you believe this guy?
Unbelievable.
I honestly
The
thought you
actual
were better
nerve.
than that.
The fact you even ask that is crazy.
I know, right? Who the hell can afford a flying broom in this economy?
All right. Sorry I even asked.
You should be sorry.
Dick.